When I hear about the unemployment rates for young people in many southern European countries, I wonder how they manage to survive. What do you know about their living arrangements?
That's one of the first things that we checked. For example, we see that in the age range, for example, let's say 25, 30, you can see that, for example, in Southern Europe, that was the region you were referring to, there are very, very large cohabitation levels with parents, whereas in northern countries, for example, in the Netherlands or in other richer countries in Germany, you have like very low cohabitation levels with the parents. And that makes a huge difference regarding, the implications of unemployment, because it's not the same to be on your own that relying on your parents or somebody else. So I would say that's the basic, let's say, survival strategy for younger people in Southern European countries like Spain, Italy, and Greece, for example. Essentially, for middle-aged people, the support comes from spouses. If the spouses are employed, that's the main source of income. And for older people, many times they can rely on their own children, right? But it's true that this middle age group, like people, let's say around 35 or 40 years, that they might have their own kids, they're not living with their parents, so they would be like the most fragile group, because they have to rely on themselves. And it turns out that, well, they're the group that's more likely to suffer from this, what we call this isolated unemployment, meaning that the living old members of the household are unemployed, so they're more fragile. We are focusing on these kind of households in which all of the members are unemployed, and this gives us like a rough idea of the extent of the danger, if you want, of being on social exclusion, because this individual, if all of them are employed, well, that becomes an issue, and especially if that goes over time, right? And an issue that we cannot cover so far with our data is to see whether there are some other kind of transfers between members that are not in the household. It's true that, for example, you could have a household in which anybody is employed, but they are receiving help from other family members living in another household. This we still cannot find with our data. But yet, I think it's important information that can be found. And as a matter of fact, in this Europe 2020 strategy for growth and development and so on, one of the headline indicators that they are producing is like looking at households that have like very low work intensity, because they're very exposed to these social shocks and these kind of things. So yeah, that's one of the things we like to focus on. I think everybody agrees that the longer you are in this situation of being isolated in a way, of not being co-residing with somebody who's employed, over time increases the possibility that you cannot enter into the labor market, so on, and in the long run there are higher and higher risks of social exclusion, and the longer the period is, the more difficult it is to come back into that, right? And regarding policies, I would say that an important effort should be made to focus on those individuals that have more dependents, right? You hear in the news very often that those families having little kids, that none of the parent is employed, so it's a problem for a parent, it's a problem for the kids. So just giving employment for those individuals can give like very high returns for these people. Maybe we make this distinction between unemployed and isolated unemployed. And of course, there are large variations across Europe, but on average, if you look for males, for example, you get like a 50% of unemployed that are isolated. Well, if you look at on average, of unemployment in Europe, you could say, well, half of these unemployed are in a way covered because they are co-residing with somebody else who is employed, right? So is this good news or not? It depends on whether you look at the glass half full or half empty. I think for women it's 40%, which is a bit more better for them. But these would be like these sorry two numbers.